Session. Welcome back to all our sessions. I hope everyone can hear me and can see me now. I hope my computer stopped being weird. And I hope we're all excited to hear more about accessibility. So, we're going to start with a round of introductions because it's important to know people's names when they are talking. So, yeah, I'm going to start from, like, I don't know, counterclockwise. I think that's how you say it. So, let's start with Ante. Mind introducing yourself? Like, what are
Hey,
you going to talk about? Yeah.
hey everyone, my name is Ante. I'm software engineer coming from Improvipen, Croatia, and today I'm gonna talk to you about one very hot topic, which is continuous localization. So I'm gonna explain how you can give you some suggestions about how you can implement localization if you have a big global product. So I hope you will enjoy my talk.
Awesome. On the after that we have Evis and Evis.
Yeah,
Nailed
or
it.
Evis. If like
Damn it.
the Finnish way of saying it is Evis, but then like
Evis. Okay.
yeah, that was perfect actually. So yeah, but I'm fine with almost everything because well,
Yeah.
I've gotten used to that. My name is not the easiest one to
Well,
pronounce, so
that doesn't
so
matter. Like my name is not pronounced Sarah, but yet everyone still calls me Sarah. Like at the end, you're just like, yeah, just I don't care. I know
yeah,
it's for me. It's fine.
yeah, yeah. I feel you. But so yeah, I'm Eevis Panula or Eeva-Jonna Panula. I have a rather long name actually, and I'm senior software developer and accessibility specialist, and I work at Futuris in Finland. And today I will be talking about some or a couple of tools and techniques that I think every developer who's working with front end should know and utilize to well, so that we can make the web at least a bit more accessible than it is right now.
Yeah. Okay, and last up we have Lainey.
Hi, hello everyone. It's morning in Berkeley, California, where I am. My name is Lainey Feingold, and I'm a disability rights lawyer here in the US. And I'll be talking about the legal space and why it matters for developers and how you all are on the front lines of enforcing human rights for people with disabilities. So, really glad to be here and looking forward to the other talks too.
Really excited to learn more about that as well. Okay, so we have three amazing speakers, three amazing talks lined up. Our first speaker is Eve. Eve, oh God, I thought I remembered, and yet I did not.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally
No,
fine.
yeah, I need to know now.
Eevis.
Evis, our first speaker is Evis, and yeah, just take it away. Have some fun.
In this demo, I will show some tools and techniques I would say every developer should know and use while developing, especially when working with front end. And why is that? Well, it often feels that the web or the apps we use on the web are made for people who are sighted, who can use a mouse, who have good fine motor skills, and sometimes it even feels like they are for users who could be described as power users. And it actually reflects that like those people who are making the web. We often forget that not every user is like ourselves. These tools and techniques, they help to catch these so-called low-hanging fruits when it comes to accessibility. And what I mean with low-hanging fruits is that in sites and apps there are issues that could be actually fixed with fairly short amount of time, and when they've been fixed, that would increase the accessibility of the site already tremendously. Of course, using these tools and techniques, it won't, like, I'm not promising that your app will be like 100% accessible. I just have to say this right here. But my goal is actually provide a starting point here, because I think, like, when it comes to accessibility, the most crucial part is to start caring, start learning, start fixing. So that's why I'm demonstrating these tools here, because because my time is fairly short. I will be showing just a couple of tools, and I won't cover all. I know that I would love to go deeply into these details, but I'm trying to keep this one short here. So yeah, it won't cover all. You've been warned. So all right, let's dive in. So first, I'm going to show you a testing tool, automated testing tool called Axe DevTools. It's a browser extension. And before diving into that, I want to say a couple of words about automated and manual testing tools. So automated testing tools, they are good catching things that can't be caught programmatically. So things like if an element has alt tag or not. So like it's easy to take, just like it takes the image element, and if there is alt tag, it doesn't react, but if there is not, then it reacts and says that, hey, this alt tag is missing. But they aren't actually good for finding issues within those alternative texts. So they really don't know if that alternative text is descriptive, for example. So they are good in catching things that can be caught programmatically. That's a hard word there. And this tool that I'm showing, it's a, like I said, it's a browser extension, and it's from a company called DQ, and it utilizes this Axe Core, which is used in test integrations for example, Jest or Cypress.io. So these tests could be integrated into like testing conventions if you are using Jest or Cypress. And I'm gonna I'm using this browser extension because it's more visual, and at least for me it gives like the information in a format that I can understand better. So that's why I like it, and I don't really have React Finland's code on my computer, so I can't like demonstrate it that way either. So yeah, I'm gonna scan the page. And all right, we found 49 issues here. And from here, we can see that there are 49 issues and 27 of them needs review. So it's possible, like, for example, the background of the hero there is it's a pattern and not like one color. So it's possible that that's one of those issues. Like you need to actually check if that color contrast is high enough, because it's hard to deduce from the like code because of the background. So yeah. And here it also says that there are like one critical issue, then 20 serious issues, one moderate issue, and then 0 minor issues. And under here, it lists all issues first, and then like all the issue types. And then like the amount of issues within that type. And I'm gonna go straight to the critical one. I know that it's this zooming and scaling should not be disabled here. And I'm gonna scroll down and we get more information about that. Here is a issue description that says ensures metaname viewport does not disable text scaling and zooming. And then it shows the element location and then element source. And here we can see that the content of this meta tag is with device width, initial scale 1, maximum scale 1, and then minimal UI. And then it gives some like possible fixes. So here it says that fix the following: maximum scale on meta tag disables zooming on mobile devices. And this means that if you are using React Finland's site on mobile, you can't zoom in. With like, if you are using your fingers to do this pins and zoom thing, you can't zoom in. And why it's a problem? Well, a person who has low vision might rely on just like the native zooming of web page to see what's on that web page. So if you disable zoom on your web page or app for mobile, then like it's unusable for people who are actually relying on that zoom. So that's like one reason why not to disable that zooming on mobile. And that's why, like, because it's preventing people using the site. That's why it's actually critical. Next thing I'm going to demonstrate is navigating with keyboard only. And why is that? Well, not everybody uses a mouse for using the web. There are people who use only a keyboard, or people who use devices that emulate the keyboard. There are also people who use voice commands for navigating the web. Then there are screen reader users who also rely on keyboard interfaces. Though it's a bit different how they navigate, but still the same rules apply. And I'm gonna open the for attendees page here, just because it has a little less links than the other ones, so it's well, faster to navigate through. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go through the site, try to, like, if I find an element that I should be able to click or interact with somehow with a mouse, I'm gonna try to do the same with a keyboard. And what this means is that, well, I'm going forward with pressing a tab. If I want to go backwards, I'm gonna use tab and shift, or shift and tab. When I encounter a link, for example, I can activate it with an enter. And if I encounter a button, I can, or I should be able to activate it with enter or space. So let's see what we have here. I'm gonna press tab and I'm gonna start from the beginning. So now the focus is on the about link here. I'm gonna check if there is a skip to content link. Okay, there is not, because the focus went straight to the browser's browser controls. So right, skip to content or skip navigation link, it's essential to have, because, well, if you are using only a keyboard for navigation, it's like, it takes time to go through all these navigational links. For example, here is, I think, like 17 links you need to tap through before you actually reach the main content. And if you have to do that on every site, then like it's 17 tabs every time on every site before reaching the content. And especially if doing that tab or pressing that tab, if it's painful, well, 17 presses, that's really painful then. And well, especially if the navigation has even more items, it's even worse there. So yeah, it's even worse there. So yeah, I'm gonna go through the navigation. Okay, yeah. One note here. The tab order should be like the same as the visual order. So like here, we first go through the navigation items and then jump to the React Finland logo. I think in this case, it's still operable, but it can be really confusing if the tab order is not the same as the visual order. All right, I'm gonna continue. Here are some links, and then there are links to, gonna continue. Here are some links, and then there are links to sponsors. I'm not gonna test all of them. So yeah. Sec. Okay, now I see a button. Next one's button. All right. I can try to, oh, I accidentally pressed a tab, but tab activated the button and opened this model, and not like I wasn't pressing enter or space here. So that's a bit confusing. I'm gonna try to tab to the model. Okay, so I pressed tab and it reloaded the model. So it's not actually working. I'm gonna just, well, I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna press escape to get out from there, and I'm gonna press tab to get to the next place. And it seems that we have a keyboard trap here. So I can't, like, now that the focus is on the button there, I can't go forward. It seems that I can't go backwards. I try refreshing the site. No, I can't refresh the page. Okay, so this is like really a problem. I think I would need to like close my computer or restart my computer in order to get back to the like site. That's really a problem. So please don't activate anything with just key press, which is like here it activates with a key press, and it seems that any key press does the trick. So yeah. All right, I'm gonna use the like the mouse to get out from there. But yeah, I'm gonna test the link quickly. So I'm now in the about thing and I'm pressing enter. So we got to a page that says organizers. In this demo, I've shown 2 tools or techniques you can use as developer. So we looked into automated testing with Axe DevTools and also keyboard navigation or testing keyboard navigation. If you're interested in learning more, I have actually written a blog post. You can find it from tinyurl.com/developerschecklist. If you're interested in learning more, there are some other checks. They are actually manual checks for, well, improving accessibility of your site or web app. So, yeah, thanks.
That's good. You know why? Because I started stuttering. So that's nice. Thank you so much for your talk. Yeah. I want to know if there are any questions, please leave them in the chat. The first thing that I wanted to ask, oh wait, there's a comment. Okay. First thing that I wanted to ask is like, what is the most common, like, blaring, like, in your face error that you usually see in websites?
I need to choose one.
Oh, you can go with 3. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think color contrast issues are one of the most like well, the number of them is the highest usually with the when I'm testing with Axe. But the thing that comes to my mind is this problem with divs.
The div soup. You don't like the div soup?
I don't like that. No, I don't like that. But there is really a problem when you create a button out of a div and then you forget to add all those roles and event listeners or for the keyboard navigation and everything. So it's really frustrating when I test a site and then I'm just tapping through it and then I see that hey, there is a button, I'm gonna try to press it, and it's really something that I really need to be able to press. Then the focus just jumps over it. So that's really frustrating. And one thing that's personally a problem for me and I see too often are these autoplaying animations or videos that take lots of space, and maybe they have a video where I saw this one video where it was, I think, a drone was filming and it was going fast towards the ground, which makes, I think, everybody feels a bit sick when they see it. But for me personally, because I have a disability that affects in a way that those kind of things make me feel disoriented or dizzy or
my wife has
feeling
that. If she sees something like that, it makes her sick for an hour or 2 hours. When something moves really fast on the screen and she's not expecting it.
Yes. Yeah. That's something that's those other things. I can live with those, and they aren't usually a problem for me because, well, I have pretty good sight and I can use a mouse. But the third thing, that's, well, a personal problem too. So yeah, I would say those three.
I would say that also that a lot of the websites that have that don't actually support reduced motion as well. They're just here's your video, enjoy your video. We have questions that are not mine, so that's good. Okay, yes, thank you. How to convince your team in the business side of operations. Accessibility is something that has to be done. Fines.
I hope that I had these easy things to say that because of this and this, and then everybody believes, but we are not living in a perfect world. But the things that I usually use are, well, money is a good factor because, well, people with disabilities, they do spend some money too, and a lot of money. They're people around them spend money, and if your site or project or app, if it's not accessible and the competitor's app or site or whatever is, they will go there and use that one. And then other ways to convince is to bring some real people into discussion. So if we are talking about, well, if it's something about motion or something, then I can just refer to myself and I get sick and everything and tell my story. But then trying to bring some real people into conversation. And I one thing I wish I could use every time that, hey, it's the right thing to do, and these are human rights and everything, that would be awesome. But I've had these conversations with a product owner where they understand that we should be doing this, but we don't have time, we don't have money, and then they just decide not to spend any time or money towards accessibility. And then in some cases there is the law aspect. In Finland, at least right now, I could use the law card for public sector websites, but I'm not going to go into there because I'm really waiting for Lainey's talk about this. So
Okay, so we have, I think.
Yeah, one
No,
other
no.
quick thing. Avis, I say all those things you just said for convincing. Another thing is companies don't like to be first, but they also don't like to lag behind. And I feel like today more and more organizations, global organizations are doing accessibility, and there's people to point to, and companies like Microsoft who want to have their clients be accessible. So kind of like the shame factor, like everybody else is doing this, why aren't you? And then the other thing is everybody has their corporate values and their policy statements, and our accessibility stuff usually fits right in. Like you talk about diversity and inclusion, but if you don't have accessibility, you can't have disabled employees. You talk about we're a people company. Everybody has their thing, and trying to fit accessibility into that can be a useful tool.
Yeah, shaming. Yeah, it usually works.
I didn't
Like
mean to
making
say it
people
like
see
that.
the thing they say. No, but I'm actually serious. Like there is a lot of problem in mostly startups. I think that is like we say these things, but we don't actually mean them. Like we have these things that we follow. Like we say that we follow, and if you throw it back in their faces, they're like, "Oh yeah, fuck, we should do this." Next question is that so assuming that one person uses HTML5 tags properly and buttons, do you think that area tags are still important?
I can use my favorite answer to this. It depends. So
Oh, no.
like, like there are cases where they are actually like you should be using them because of some technical things and how some, for example, screen readers work, like in one way and the others work in another way. So like in those cases, it might be needed. And then like it depends on the widget you are building, for example. Well, if we are talking about buttons, that's usually not necessary. But if we are talking about something more complex, then it might be. And actually, it usually is the case that you need to use these ARIA attributes or states or properties. But then again, don't overuse them. So this is like it's not an easy answer or like yes or no answer. So yeah.
Yeah. And the final question that I have for now is, do you know a website which does accessibility really well?
I know, but right now I can't remember any. So
This can go to
I'm sorry.
anyone. That's fine as well. Lainey, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I'll mention my website, not to brag, but just to say that my developer, Natalie McLeese, is really, she's a small shop. Her company is called Digital A11Y, Hire Digitally, and she has a lot of resources for developers on her site. And my site tries to be WCAG 2.1 AAA because I was asked to make the site that way to help the standard get through. It's a simple site. I don't sell anything, so it's not applicable to everyone, but I like to point it out because I think she does a really good job, and everybody I refer her to, I don't know if you all know her, but she's really great to work with, and she's very generous in sharing her knowledge, and it shows it just like a small shop. She's just herself. She can do it. The website is lflegal.com.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that is all the questions we have for now. Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. I did learn a bunch of stuff. I don't know why I'm started in English. I've been told it wasn't possible to start it in a second language, and I feel lied to. I don't like this feeling. Okay, so thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your talk. Next up, we have Ante, and Ante is going to talk about continuous localization. I want to say that I did some research before, is because I read the bio thing, and I did some research to find out that about 75% of the entire world does not speak English at all. Like zero or just hello doesn't really count. This is something that I did not like. I am not a native English speaker, and I think except Lainey, none of us are. But it's something that a lot of the times we forget because we live in, like, we are very privileged by English in school, and our countries, I think, at least from what I've seen of Finland and Croatia, both have really high levels of English. But we sometimes remember that this is a privilege and not a right. Not everyone gets to learn these things in school. Not everyone gets to have the time to think about it. And I think this talk is really important because a lot of us in the developer world forget, because we're so used to reading everything in English, to doing everything in English, that we just think it's the standard. And it's not. It's really not. So yeah. Please welcome Ante. Take it away, my man.
Hi, and big hello from Croatia. I'm gonna talk today about continuous localization in Enterprise Web Project, which is a very hot topic, and I'm also gonna talk about how we did it in InfoBip. I hope that you will enjoy my session, so let me start from introducing myself. Hi, my name is Ante. I'm 27 years old, software engineer working in InfoBip for the past 5 years. I'm also a Master of Science in Computing and Web Infrastructure Software Engineer. I'm also frequently involved with meetups and conferences, and I'm educator, mentor, and speaker. And I have several interests, and some of them are React, Webpack, application build, optimization, performance, web architecture, automations, and experience. And I'm also a hobby photographer, so feel free to check my Instagram if you are interested in some of my pictures. Okay, let's begin. Language today connects people, and we need to make sure that our message gets everywhere. But we have to ask ourselves, do our clients speak English? Because at average, about 50% of users do not speak or use English at all, and that is the same thing for InfoBip Web Interface, which is our main web product. Because 50% of our clients use one of the non-English languages, but also speak for the importance of translations. And we need to make sure to use a proper tool and to give clients the best possible experience. But we will always have universal words like, for example, sauna, which is used in a lot of languages. And of course, pizza, jacuzzi, banana, taxi, kiwi, mango. But this is not enough. Only a few words. But we need to think about full applications. Anyway, for ambitious, fast-growing business, for example, the question of going global is usually a case of when, because the majority of businesses typically don't recognize the importance of translation, so there is a lot more to building a global product. So localization is often an afterthought and something that is not explored or implemented, and we will come to the situation where localization becomes a bottleneck which can jeopardize international expansion and make it a lot more expensive and useful. But we can prevent this by actually ensuring that localization is an integral business process that is important for going global, and we need to think about how to implement it. For example, continuous localization. And remember, localization is the key to the future localization. And remember, localization is the key to the future international business. So make sure you properly do it, especially as market researchers have shown that people respond better to content in their own language and which is in accordance with their own culture. And what I'm gonna do today, I'm gonna tell you a story about our beginnings with translations, how we got to continuous localization, and how we implemented translations inside InfoBip web interface. So let's begin. First off, we have internationalization and localization. Internationalization is when developers design the application so that they can be localized without engineering changes. And localization is the process of actually adapting your application for different languages or locales. And Here's when translators come in with translation and everything. And I mentioned locale, and can think of locale like an identifier and that finding the user language or region, for example, in English US or Spanish Latin America and similar. And usually here you'll be able to use different integrations like for example i18x or your own. And for localization, be aware that translators will focus on translating the message of your content for international readers so that everyone can get it. And all of this also goes beyond design because we need to properly prepare design and layout to show correctly in all languages. And to achieve all of this, we also use a cloud-based translation management system, which I will call TMS in the next slide. But before we begin, I want to assume that our solution is called IBI18N and that we have two very crucial commands. First one is build, where we pull the phrases and translations to generate translation files. And the second command is scan, where we scan the project to detect the phrases and then we push them to translation management system to have them translated. So they are crucial and important. So when we have that, we need to also think about how to approach translation. And we are going to check some of the three translation management strategies, such as waterfall or agile or continuous localizations, and we are going to see what are some good and bad sides. So let's do that. When we have waterfall localization, we have linear process, which is like waterfall, and when we get to localization, we actually have everything prepared, and we have a pretty big chunk of the text that actually needs to be translated, and that is only after development. This generally blocks the text changes and will delay the release until everything is ready, but it is also, how I say, kind of very tedious to prepare breaking text into the string because that is very hard for bit application. All of this generally feels very manual and it is prone to errors, and it can also be hard to track the progress on translator side. So this is not what we want. And in agile localization, we will simply add localization inside every sprint. And this will have the smaller amount of the boxes that need to be translated, and it will be done in time with development in this sprint, but it is also not what we want because it may be more frequent and in time with development, but it will also require the teams to add some sort of automation because Agile will ensure automations out of the box only for translators to translation management system. But when you think about translators, the one additional problem is that they don't know our development environment. From their side, this is higher frequency, more frequent update they need to do without context, but with smaller boxes, smaller volumes of text. And deadlines are much smaller, so there is a larger margin for errors. And with continuous localization, this is the most effective one in the ever-changing market because we want now localization automated and seamless. And teams should be able to deliver the product that is ready for release without waiting for translation changes, and they should just move on after that because we will have a never-ending translation job that is fully integrated into continuous delivery workflow. So let's also mention some survey data. So here you will see that we have a pretty big amount of percentage, like 67%, which means that those companies either don't use anything or they use Excel and Google Spreadsheet. And for example, in InfoPip, we started from internally built tools and then we moved to translation management system, Cloud One. Let's see how we started in InfoPip system. And in between we have full translation, abracadabra, magic mumbo jumbo, which handles everything, including pulling and pushing the translations. Sadly, we depend on installing everything at an NPM package, which means that we don't have anything unified. Translations depend on application builds, and the biggest problem is we need to redeploy on every change and wait for every app to wait. Imagine 50 applications and you have to wait for days, and that is blah. Yeah. No. Yeah. So let's complicate, because do we need to complicate? No. So we will simplify it and we'll move to cloud-based solution, automated translations, and let's mention some of the most common features. So first we have translation memory, where once we translate some phrase, it is saved in some sort of database, and when we have the same phrase, we can simply reuse already translated phrase to speed up the localization process. Then we have machine translations, like for example Google Translate, and most of cloud systems also have it, and even though it is not perfect, it can be used to get some sort of head start. And then you can also hire translation agencies or freelance translators which can then do the localization, and since we have translation management system, this is much easier. And also we cannot have automation without some sort of powerful API. So this is also something which is quite easier with translation management system, because they have them out of the box and on the cloud. And let's also explore what we have with the UI. Generally, we will have one project per language, and you will see here that we have Portuguese, German, Spanish, etc., etc. When we have new phrases, we have a system which says we want it to this, and that language, and we usually add it to every language. So let's now go into one of these projects and check what we have. And when we check one project, for example, we can see some basic information like source, subject, yada 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 yada. And we can see that at the bottom we have documents. One document will equal one Node.js project, and it should be localized. So we will go into one document and let's check what we have there. And when we check, for example, a single document, we can see that we have source, where you can see the phrases, and under target we can translate them either by ourselves or through translation memory. And then we also have some details like number of words at the top, and at the bottom we can add some comments, some details, something that can help to translators, or we can even check some additional statistics if it's necessary. And let's also explore the implementation. We have, for example, our build tools, which you can assume is called IBI89 tools. And we have 4 different versions and it all has npm packages. What is very, very wrong. Okay, so let's then extract and unify this somehow. So luckily, thanks to Node.js, we can actually use the npx command, which means that we don't have to install the dependency. So we can also see that we have extracted some of the common commands like scan and build to our Jenkins plugin, where we have also specified a single version. So by having everything in one place is awesome, but what can happen if we are missing some commands? Also, we have to build project one by one again, and that is so we need to also improve this somehow, because that is not good. So let's improve this by making our translations independent and instant. So we will take text interfaces and we will simply extract it to its own independent Jenkins job, and we call it a part of the application, and then we have it at its own and one step less in the build. What is awesome. So we can do this for build as well. So let's do it. We'll do again the same thing, where we will take build job, extract it outside from the project, and we will generate a Jenkins job. Or both scan and build will run once a day, each one of them, while build will generate translation files. It will put them to CDN, and then webs will be able to download them and easily use them. And woohoo! We really managed to extract everything. So let's see, what does all of this mean? What do we get with this? Well, first we have instant translation updates everywhere at the same time, and those jobs are independent, unified, consistent, and automatic Android workflow, which means that teams don't need to know all details. And there are no blockers anymore, and we can basically move toward continuous localization also like how we want to. And also, as we have scan and build jobs separate, that means that we have translations as some sort of independent application plugin. And we are calling this Decompose i18n because it doesn't depend on any of the application. We update it by itself by using scan and build job, where each one of them is run once a day. And for build job, we also save all the translation files on CDN from where webs can then pull it and use it. So let's also see what we get with Decompose i18n. First, we are not borrowing through that anymore. We control release and deploy request and repeating like parent, deploy this, deploy that, blah, 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 blah. So we are able to ensure that we have translation covered by making sure everything is initialized and ready, and also the code is simpler. So we ensure that writing translations and ensuring them is easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Yeah. And let's also see a couple more things and what else can be used for in the translation process. So the most important ones for us are translation coverage and English phrase verification, because we need to also ensure that we can detect the phrase, because otherwise we won't be able to do anything or fix or localize anything. And generally for English verification, we have a UX writer who will review the web interface and will see if anything needs to be fixed, and if anything is necessary, then they will add in other target. And when we run the scan job, like we do here, it will check if anything was fixed or replaced, and it will generate any necessary pull requests, which will then be sent to necessary teams. And when we talk about translation coverage, we need to ensure that we have 100% translation coverage together with automated coverage validation, because we may prepare everything for localization, but that doesn't mean that it will be localized for sure. So to help with this, we are preparing automated validation and fake language. So let's check them out. And we basically, for fake language, we retrieve phrases and generate that fake language. And we basically, for fake language, we retrieve phrases and generate that fake language, which you can recognize by this dot. So if we have no dots, that means that that phrase will not be localized, and that is the problem, which we need to fix, of course. And we also have something to help us out. One internal language toolbox, which allows us to quickly change the language so that we can verify if everything is okay with translations. And then, when we talk about coverage validation, we talk about two paths. state trees, which we use for code-based check and automatic updates, and UI testing, which we use for the tools like Cypress, Puppeteer, for a little bit more concrete coverage testing. So both are awesome for automation, and state trees have a lot of problems with false positives, but with UI testing, we don't have those problems, and we can even use screenshots. They have a lot of available plugins, but one problem is that depending on how you have set up translations, it can be quite complex to integrate into your product. So you need to be careful. And why did I mention screenshots? Because sometimes we will have a different phrase which will look very similar, and it can have, say, confusing context because it cannot be clear on the first to what it needs to be translated. And because of that, we have screenshot support, where for each phrase we take a screenshot showing that phrase in the application, and we upload it together with it. So that significantly helps translators, as they can actually understand the context much easier. And lastly, imagine that we have phrases from backend, and now in order to localize them, we have to basically hardcode them, and this is not good, especially in multiple projects, and if we need to update it everywhere, because no. So to avoid that, we are working on setting up server-side translations, which use an awesome open source tool called Surge, and it's also good that it works with a lot of different integration and systems. And this is basically what I wanted to say, so let's sum up at the end. Basically, overall, what we want is translations to be seamless and automated so that developers don't have to worry about translations once they integrate them. And we should have no limits in how to write code, as we shouldn't have any blockers because of implementation data. And also make sure that everything is continuously improved, because if don't implement translations only once and then ignore them for years. From our experience, that happened to us, and we saw how much harder it was to actually update everything, and it was a struggle. So, as everything else is evolving, ensure that translations are evolving as well, so keep them up to date and work on constantly improving them. Thank you all for listening to me. I hope that you like my session, and if looking forward to your questions, and if anyone wants to contact me further, reach out to me on email or on React Finland Slack, or just bring me over one of the channels that is available. Thank you, and bye bye. Yeah, muted again.
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. We have one question. That is that how is your tool able to detect new phrases and remove duplicates? You did mention the part about the context that the phrase is used in, but is there any more like detail you can also go into that?
Well, yes, I can mention a few. So when we have, for example, our tool that we use, when we have new phrases, we detect them per project level. So that will mean that the phrase can be duplicated, but if it is duplicated inside one project, those translation management tools are usually smart to detect it because they usually assign, let's say, some sort of unique ID. So based on that unique ID, we can know which phrase is for what. And translations usually have one option, which is something called namespaces. So imagine, for example, that you have, let's say, React Finland page, and you have header at the top, and you have at the bottom, and you have in between. So if you on the same page, for example, want to identify different parts where you have the same phrase that possibly has a different context, you can set up some namespace, which is like some descriptive word or something similar. So with duplicates, we remove them only if it is inside the same project and it is inside the same namespace. So, and regarding the context, yes, we have screenshot support, which we are actually currently working on implementing, but if we have, for example, some sort of automated UI testing tool integrated with translations, it is possible to take a screenshot, and each one of these tools actually supports adding some sort of, some sort of attachments. And we already add, for example, the location in the code, but we also are starting to add a screenshot as well. So at the moment, we have to do it like this, but as soon as we manage to fully integrate screenshots, that will be the way that we will go with.
Awesome. I hope that answers your question. Someone is asking that sometimes they would like to suggest better translations for apps, but only a very few amount of apps have crowdsourcing possibilities. Do you have any ideas on this? How do you see the future when it comes to crowdsourcing translations?
Well, regarding crowdsourcing translation, we have to basically think about, we mean how to say submitting data, right? So that I'm clear here.
What? Sorry, a
Right?
mitigator?
No, we crowdsourcing. I mean, we probably mean, how to say, having multiple users, obtaining some suggested translation.
Like for example, imagine the React website, and I go there and I'm like, this does not mean what do you think it means in Portuguese, and I try to update it, but there's nothing for me to update. Like there's no crowdsourcing thing. Yeah.
Well, for example, we are using we are using the solutions like translation agencies or freelance translators, and usually before we give a green light to translator, we get opinion from someone else. There is one useful option where you can actually go with, let's say, multi-stage translation. So first you get the translation, then someone needs to review it and confirm that it is okay, and then we usually need to test it, for example, in our testing environment, make sure that everything is working, and especially ensure the translation coverage. So in the future, I think that everyone will start moving more towards those cloud-based tools, but that it would be possible to use someone from the translators market to know. Either someone can possibly suggest a better phrase. We are actually discussing possibly adding some sort of feedback form for translation. So if someone sees something that possibly has a wrong context, they can actually make a suggestion, and then we can view it and we can check about fixing it. So I would say if we want to implement crowdsourcing in some sort, the good beginning stage would definitely be using feedback form and trying to use someone from the translators market. So usually, they charge, I think, probably at the amount of words and that, but it can definitely be some good first step forward, in my opinion, I would say.
Yeah. I have one very fast question. Does your translation service handle left to right and right to left? Like switching the.
We actually do have Arabic language support, but we had it with the old internal translation system. Now we are working on adding it to our cloud-based system. It is actually not so simple because, we have tools like we have some new tools inside our web interface, so it can be tricky to figure out. So when we work on left to right or right to right languages, the best suggestion for moving forward is to, I don't know, either hire designers or working designers to ensure that this is rendered correctly, because it can be something very, very tricky. We, for example, currently have some issues with Arabic, but we are working on it. We are aware of it, and I'm sure we will get it done and ready in no time. So my suggestion is to approach like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I didn't do anything, man. Just chilling here. We have one more speaker today before I will let you all go for a nap. And our last speaker is Lainey. She is a disability rights lawyer in the United States, and she's going to talk to us about the law side of it, how we can use that to our advantage when we want to create more accessible websites. I am really excited for this talk, so take it away, Lainey.
Thank you. I'm going to do this live, so I will share my screen. And yeah, competing against the possibility of a nap. I don't know. I'm going to have to try to make the
No, the nap is after. The nap is after.
Okay. It's only 8 o'clock. It's basically 8:30 in the morning here. So really glad. Yeah, so I'm good. Yeah, so thank you. It's really glad to, I'm really glad to be here. I have the title slide up, Digital Accessibility Legal Landscape, Why It Matters for Developers. I have my name, Lainey Feingold. My website, as I mentioned before, is lflegal.com. On my website, I try to share legal updates primarily from the US, but I do try to keep somewhat on top of what's happening in the global space. We'll talk about that in a minute. So lflegal.com, it's written for people who are not lawyers. So I invite you to check it out if you're curious about the legal side of things. I also have my Twitter here, which is @lflegal. And I just want to give you a quick story about my website name, lflegal.com. My Twitter handle @lflegal. So when I got my first website, which was probably late for you guys, but around 15 years ago, I was going to call it LaineyFeingold.com. And a friend of mine who's blind said, you can't call it LanieFeingold.com. No one will know how to spell Lanie. No one will know how to spell Feingold, and your email address will not fit on your business card in one line of Braille. And he suggested, why don't you just be LF Legal, which then became a brand. It was before Twitter. And I always share that because I am a disability rights lawyer, and my work has really legal advocacy initiatives. And without my blind friend thinking about one line of Braille, I would not have this branded kind of name that sounds like I paid a branding agency for it. So listening to disabled people and putting disabled people front and center in the legal space and advocacy is really key. You'll see that there is a dolphin swimming in the background of my title slide, and that is because I think that you do not have to be a shark to be a good legal advocate. I don't think you have to be a shark to be a lawyer, to enforce the kind of laws we're going to talk about. A lot of times people say, oh, you have to be a shark. It's a civil right if you're not strong. In my experience, I have not filed any lawsuits in the last 25 years around digital accessibility, but I have been in the digital accessibility space since 1995, working in collaboration, bringing people together. I've represented blind people primarily and work with large corporations in the US, Bank of America, Walmart, CVS, government agencies, without lawsuits, because true accessibility comes from collaboration. Like Eva said, bringing people with disabilities in is really front and center, and you can do that with the law too. So let's get started. I have more dolphins on this page. I won't have dolphins every page, but dolphins is kind of my spirit animal for this kind of work. Accessibility is a human right of disabled people. If somebody needs to go and take their nap right now, this is the central message of my talk. Accessibility is a human right of disabled people, and that means that all of you as developers are human rights champions, are human rights enforcers, and are human rights heroes, because the work that you do to make websites and mobile apps and kiosks accessible to everyone means that everyone is able to participate and express their human rights. So accessibility is a human right of disabled people. Why do we say that? We say it because when you do the kinds of things that Evis was talking about, when you use the ACTS tools to make sure that you don't have the low-hanging fruit, that the low-hanging fruit isn't there, that your color contrast is right, that your errors are addressed, then you are working to encourage participation of people who can't see, people who can't hold a mouse, people who can't hear, people who, as Eva said, have motion, have responses to motion that are unhealthy, get migraines, cognitive disability. So you are in your work creating the ability of people to participate, to communicate, and to do so in privacy and independent. This is an area we're talking about before that, all organizations talk about security. We're secure. We want security. We want privacy. We protect your independence. But without accessibility, there is no privacy. Your independence. But without accessibility, there is no privacy. There is no independence for people with disabilities because they need to ask for help. So by doing accessibility and thinking of it as a human right, you're really working to protect participation, communication, and privacy in every sector. So I just put a few up here: civil society, education, health, employment, judicial, transportation, commercial, entertainment. No matter what you do, I don't know the audience in this format. I can't really get to meet you, but you are working to create participation, communication with privacy independence in whatever sector you're in, which all adds up to inclusion. So accessibility is a human right because accessibility is about inclusion. So you can think of it, fill in the blank. My accessible coding means that a disabled student, a disabled patient in a hospital, a disabled shopper can participate in schoolwork, can participate in banking, can participate in entertainment, and can communicate with teachers, can communicate with doctors, can communicate with uh, friends and lovers. So you can fill this in for your own self and just know that it's not a checklist, although checklists matter. It's not a burden like, oh my God, legal requirement, but it's really inviting participation. So it's inviting inclusion. What's the opposite of inclusion? I like this picture. It shows a person kind of looking sadly into a window because they're excluded. So the opposite of inclusion is exclusion, and accessibility is a human right because inclusion in society is what human rights is all about. So as a developer, your role is either exclusion, which I illustrate here by this locked door, or inclusion, which I illustrate by the open door, not just open, but open with sunlight coming in, because those of you who have worked with people with disabilities can truly see the difference in experience when something is accessible and usable and easy and streamlined and smooth. It really is kind of like, I don't want to be too corny, but kind of like light streaming in. So your role as developers can really make a difference between the excluded locked door and the included open door. But these human rights aren't just ideas. They start with ideas, and that's why I like to start with ideas, because I think in our societies, I know this is a global audience, which I love being part of. The law is often, it kind of has a bad reputation. It's like, oh, law and the legal, I don't know how many of you have had situations where your legal departments are like limiting instead of creating, allowing you to experience all the benefits of accessibility. So I'd like to start with the ideas, but it's not just ideas. Ideas are baked into laws. I like baking analogies. I often talk about them. I write about them. And I asked Juho, what kind of baked goods do you have in Finland? I know not everybody's from Finland, but I'm very excited to try this one day. Blueberry, I put it in the Google Translate. Speaking of translation, it said blueberry rooster, also better translated, I guess, as blueberry purse, because you're folding the blueberries in. And this picture looks delicious. I put the website where I got the picture. You can also get the recipe at martat.fi. And the idea is that the human rights principles that really underscore all our work in doing accessibility are baked into laws. So what do those laws look like? There are laws, the title here on the slide said laws plus around the world. Those pluses stand for there are laws, there are treaties, there are the right of people with disabilities to fully participate in society. In 2021, that is not possible without digital accessibility. So it may be that the laws don't yet reach, like it was mentioned earlier, outside the US and a few countries, most of the emphasis is still on the public sector. But the laws and all these other legal types of documents are moving towards a time when we have specific laws incorporating the human rights ideas for inclusion. So I like this picture of a globe, graphic of a globe with people with disabilities. You can see people in wheelchairs, some with a guide dog on top of the globe. But what I did on this slide is just give you a few examples in the short time we have, and even if we had a longer time. I just realized I put my timer on, but I forgot to press start. So I'm going to just do myself a time check. The laws are so different. The good news is that the legal standard of the WCAG 2.1 AA in Europe, the EN 301549, are pretty international and standardized. When I first started working on web accessibility, it was in the mid 90s. And I was asked by some blind people to help them get ATMs that talk. So blind people can independently, again, independent access to their own money. And we were working on the talking ATMs in this collaborative way without a lawsuit. And about 4 years into the negotiation, because there were no talking ATMs anywhere at the time, about 4 years into the negotiation, our blind clients came to us and said, okay, great, we're making good progress on talking ATMs, but there's this new thing called online banking, which at one point was new around 1997, 98 when we started working on it. And we better make that accessible, our clients told us, or else we're going to be again locked out of access to our financial information. And I had never heard of web accessibility. I had barely heard of the web. And I got involved with the Web Accessibility Initiative and learned like the most important thing you can do is use these standards, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which at the time were at 1.0, and just, I think, they're 20 years old in 2020. I don't know, it was around 98, 99. And so we put that in our agreements that the United States banks would use the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines because I was convinced that internationalization of the standards was so important. And that is really how it has developed. Most countries, the European Union, the United States that have laws use the same standards. So that is good. The Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, CRPD, has so much great language about the rights of people with disabilities to participate in the digital world, specifically about accessibility, education, government. So that is a source. We'll talk in a minute how these laws are used, but just to know, like to put it in your pocket. It's not like these are just some ideas. These are actually incorporated into laws around the country. European Accessibility Act and the Web Accessibility Directive. Finland adopted the CRPD in 2016. Thank you. The United States has not adopted it yet. And Finland has a law, which you all know more than I do, about digital accessibility, requiring an accessibility statement using the EN 301549 standard. I put another parts of the world up here: France, Africa, United States, and Canada, of course. I'll talk about the US in a bit. The real thing I want to share is how can you keep up with it? And how can you find out what's happening in your own country? So, because things are constantly changing. So the most important sort of takeaway is the laws are there and they're constantly evolving. I have a post on my website, lflegal.com, which doesn't have Finland yet, but I'm going to add it. And you can find it, you can search the word Japan because there's not many articles about Japan. You can find it that way, or it's in the most popular articles. I try to keep that up. And at the top, I also link to other resources that are also trying to keep up. So I invite you, if you go there and your country is not represented, I get a lot of the updates from audience members that I speak to, people I know from Twitter. So feel free to let me know what's happening in your country. I spoke with someone from Germany yesterday, and I say, well, how do you keep up? And he's like, it's really talking to people on the ground. The laws aren't just in the books. They're how are people using them and what's happening. So the laws exist, but laws need enforcement. Without enforcement, you just have something written on a piece of paper. Better than just an idea in the head, but still it's on a piece of paper. Again, a baking analogy. So without enforcement, the laws are unbaked. With enforcement, the laws are baked. This is another Finnish baked good that I learned about. And it's pulla bread. I don't know how you pronounce it, Pulla. It's unbaked in one picture and it's baked in the other picture. This I got from feastingathome.com. I want to make this too. So how are laws enforced? Disabled people every day are enforcing the laws. Every day. And I bring that up here because many of your organizations or all your organizations should have a way for people to give feedback. And that feedback is really enforcing civil rights laws and giving you as developers the opportunity to enforce civil rights laws. People do not call up and say, you violated my legal right. You violated section XYZ of some law. No, they call up with the practical impact of these laws. I can't find what I'm looking for. I can't see the screen because the print is too light. Again, the color contrast. I know you have a video, but I don't know what it's saying because I'm deaf and I can't hear the speaker. So it's a real opportunity for people inside organizations, champions as all you are, or you wouldn't be here at this conference, at this talk, to find out how are these laws being enforced by people with disabilities, trying to enforce them, and then you can pick it up and actually enforce them. Government agencies do work in the United States. I don't really know what's happening in Finland on this, or specifically in some other countries. I do know there is work. The European Disability Forum keeps good track of that. It's a good way to find out. There are lawsuits, fewer lawsuits in other parts of the world than there are in the US. Lawsuit was just filed in Canada. Actually, it was a government agency complaint in Canada in the last 2 weeks on airline access, airline website accessibility, and through collaborations. As I said, that has been my main way of doing this work, through collaborations and by developers who deliver accessible code. How are laws enforced? By developers who deliver accessible code. So let's talk. I just want to share a few of the lawsuits in the US, just so you have a sense of what's happening here. These are kind of my favorites. The state of California bought a website for its parks department where people could register for camping sites. They paid $6 million for this website. It was delivered without accessibility. This is the question of procurement and making sure technology that's purchased for employees and the public and customers is accessible. This was $6 million as a lawsuit to try to recover that $6 million for the public because it was delivered inaccessible. There's Winn-Dixie grocery store. The reason I want to mention this is because this was a case where a part of the United States federal court system said websites are not covered by the law in the United States, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I bring it up because sometimes information gets out there on Twitter or LinkedIn, big laws for web accessibility in the Winn-Dixie case. But in fact, in the US, the federal court system has 11 or 12 different sections. There's every state, there's 50 states, every state, not every state has a law, but many do, could be different. So this Winn-Dixie grocery store only applied to 3 southern states, which, as you may know, are the more conservative states in the United States. Most courts in the United States are saying that the Americans with Disabilities Act does cover websites. Why? Back to the human rights angle, because the Americans with Disabilities Act is very wide-ranging law about including people with disabilities in all aspects, and there is no inclusion in 2021 without accessibility. And then the last one, Domino's Pizza. I have a big picture of a pizza here because that also got a lot of international attention. The US Supreme Court had a chance to talk about web accessibility. They chose not to, which meant that one of those other courts in the federal system got to have the last word in that case, which was, yes, people can file lawsuits about the lack of web accessibility in the US. This is a picture of a shark. And it's playing the Jaws theme in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't like sharks, as I said before. And I have a big purple X covering the shark because lawsuits play a really important role in the United States. Enforcement actions play an important role. You can, as Eva said, you can use a law card, but as a motivator, because fear is not a good motivator. Fear is not a good motivator. It's constricting. It makes people want to do the minimum. That happens in the US because while lawsuits have played an important role, they've also, we have a lot of unethical lawsuits as well as ethical ones. So fear is not good. A better way to avoid lawsuits is another baking analogy, accessibility baked in from the start. I have a article on my website. It's called Accessibility is Delicious. You can find it through Google if you're interested. And it talks about a lot of baking analogies. The primary one people use is you cannot put the blueberries in the muffin once the muffin is baked, which is why I put in another picture of the blueberry purse, the blueberry rooster, because it's a blueberry analogy and it's perfect because your role as developer is to make sure that accessibility gets in there and is not thought about just when it comes to the testing phase. Of course, there is the idea of shift left, and it's really important to have accessibility in the design phase before it gets to the developers. But this is a better way to avoid lawsuits than fear that you're going to get hit with a lawsuit. So I just want to close with a couple of ideas like this. Accessibility baked in from the start. Accessibility, many ingredients, many roles, with another picture of the pull of bread. So, this is a talk for developers, and I think you all play such a crucial role in accessibility, but I also want to acknowledge that you cannot do it yourselves. And it's really important in organizations not to just put the accessibility burden on the shoulders of the developers, because it matters for design, it matters for testing, marketing, HR. There's almost not a role in the modern organization that doesn't have an accessibility obligation. Matt May from Adobe, who you may know, he has an expression. He says, some people need to know a lot about accessibility, and that's you all, but everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to know something. So that's why I like to use the ingredient. I often show a picture of cookies and say, oh, there's so many ingredients in the cookies, and it's for all the roles that make accessibility happen. And one of those roles is the law. I like to say the law is a salt, because if there's too much salt in a baked good, then it's not going to taste very good. But if there's not enough salt, it also won't be sweet. So it's important to understand that the law is integral to the work that you do, but not so much that it's driving companies by fear. So accessibility, not one and done, and no shortcuts. Couple things on the shortcuts. If you're not familiar with the overlay problem, I tend to call it an overlay crisis. I invite you to look at overlayfactsheet.com. I'm going to check that. Somehow it's not sounding right to me. These are one line of code software that promise full ADA compliance with one line of JavaScript inserted into your website. They don't work. There's been a lot written about it. I've done talks about it. This is something that, in my view, has partially come from so many lawsuits in the US. So the work is not one and done, which is why understanding the civil rights background and foundation of your work is so important, because if it's just a checklist, you're not going to remember, oh, there's a new release. Did we make sure accessibility is still there? Have we incorporated feedback from our customers? What are we doing about procurement? So it's not one and done. And that's really why you all are heroes, because you're doing it day in and day out, probably sometimes having to struggle with your own internal teams, internal, higher ups to make sure it happens. And most important, of course, involving disabled people. This is a picture from disabilityin.org. They have, that's what I'm looking for, stock photos of disabled people. This shows 3 people working, getting disabled people involved from the start. I'll just tell you one quick story. I worked with a major finance company in the US for a blind woman who used a Braille display and JAWS, and she was an options trader, which is a super fast financial stock trading kind of thing. And she could do everything. They made a switch. They forgot it's not one and done. She couldn't do it anymore. We brought her to a meeting, had a big screen at the top, and she shared her experience, went through the whole website, and the developers were there, the trainers, the decision makers, the lawyers, and everyone was just kind of jaw-dropping to watch this woman do options trading with, she's completely blind, just using the JAWS and the Braille display. So that company like turned around in that 1.5 hour meeting, seeing her. I mean, how many of you as developers have seen your work in the hands of people with disabilities? How many of the people holding the purse strings in your organization have seen your work in the hands of disabled people? So that is really critical too. And like I said, accessibility is delicious. And this is another finished treat. So I want to make sure we have a few minutes for questions. So I'll stop there and say, stay in touch. You can reach out to me through my website, lflegal.com, on the contact page, or let's connect on Twitter or LinkedIn. I like to say accessibility is global. This conference proves it. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me, and let's have some questions.
You know what's interesting is that at work I forget to mute, and then everyone can hear my very loud keyboard. Thank you so much for this presentation. It also made me incredibly hungry, though. So much I had to go pick up a yogurt. It didn't fulfill my need of like sweets, but well, it did something.
I know.
Yeah. Do you? I don't think for now we are waiting for one question. Does anyone in one of the speakers have any questions they would like to ask? And then we're gonna go to the takeaways. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The struggle of getting this is getting clients funding, or doing accessibility improvements, getting PO project managers to accept it, just basically getting money. Yeah, I agree. From my experience, it's also that. And I think that,
I don't know.
Go. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know if you guys know the consulting firm Intopia in Australia. They're an accessibility consultancy, and they have a great talk they've done on, like, how do you do that convincing, and how everybody's different. Some people are going to react to the threat of a lawsuit. Some people are going to be motivated to do the right thing, like we were saying earlier. Some people are going to be motivated by the shaming and keeping up with the corporate, but I feel like we're on a cusp of real change here. There's so many accessibility jobs, and COVID has really shown people how important the digital is. So I'm an optimist. Yeah. I forgot to mention I have a book on collaborating around these issues, and one of the things I talk about is the importance of optimism. That it can be it can be hard for us, but we have to remain optimistic that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, and I think that's happening here.
Someone is saying that I'm not sure if devs are willing to work on accessibility because of ever tight roadmaps, but who convinces management that it provides value so that devs work at it? I think it has to honestly come from devs in this case. I think you have to be the person that has to say it.
You know, I think I always encourage people to go to the Microsoft accessibility portal, look at the fact that Microsoft did a Super Bowl ad. I mean, I know Super Bowl is just a US thing, but they did a national ad on their accessible gaming controller. And they always talk about design for one, build for all. And that, like, why is Google did an ad about their captioning? on the big entertainment show here. So I think these large companies are setting a standard that this stuff matters.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's also about like these large companies. They're a lot of the times they're not the best when it comes to human rights, but they are the best when it comes to money. And I think everyone's just starting to realize just because you're disabled doesn't mean you're poor, doesn't mean you don't have money. And they're starting to be like, oh wait, there's like 20% of the population we haven't tapped in, so I guess we should tap into that. And then they use this as this like very good motive. Well, it's just like we kind of just want more money. And I'm like, I don't care why you're doing it. At least you're doing it. Like that doesn't matter. Yeah.
Can I add something? Well, for example, generally people who have, let's say, damaged hearing or have issues with, can see that, well, that doesn't have to mean that it usually with us that we are, how to say, more motivated. And people who are more motivated, even if they have some limit, will always try to achieve more. So I think it's always worth to look into accessibility and to do something for people, for those kind of people, because we need to make our webs accessible so that everyone can easily see it, read it. And I think that should include both accessibility in general and even, as I was talking about, localizations as well. So we should definitely try to have a full package, in my opinion.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so we're done for questions. Our final step is to go to takeaways, which is let the video show. God, I just looked at coffee and I was like, I need you. So let's start with Ante again. And like, do you have any takeaways that you think are really important that you got from these 3 talks?
So for my presentation or in general?
In general. It can be from yours, but in general, yeah.
Well, definitely accessibility should be something what is a first-class citizen. We should make sure that we properly test webs, that we follow everything what is necessary, and that we consider that especially in the ever-growing world, in the world when we will have a different variety of people, we consider all variables. We need to know who are our clients, what we can achieve, and then we should work towards that goal, because I think that if we can, if we can explain that or show that clearly, we will be able to implement accessibility on every website.
Yeah. Eve, how about you? Did I do it? I don't think I did it.
Evis.
Damn it!
Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, like there has been so many good points, but I think like the key takeaway is that accessibility is a human right. So I think like that's the most important thing here.
Lainey, you have any takeaways from today? No, you're muted, Lainey.
I'm going to go with practicing muting and unmuting. No, I'm going to go with accessibility is global. I'm going to go with accessibility is global, which is evidence on the screen. I love what everyone said. Ante's talk was over my head, but over the many years I've been in this space, I realized it's important to be in talks that are over your head, because a little bit sprinkles down. Avis, I have experienced many things that you talked about. So I think I like the accessibility as global idea because we're all in community together. And I think remembering accessibility as a human right, remembering that this is a global community, remembering that disabled people comprise 15% of the global population, just it kind of elevates the work that you're all doing. And we got to be down and dirty and do the actual work, and we got to keep the big picture ideas. So I really want to thank you all, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this.
Thank you all for coming. And Yeah, traditional Finnish food looks amazing. Last time I've
I know.
been to Finland, I don't remember eating pastry. Oh, I think you lied to me. I just remember a lot of coffee. It was great, but I don't remember pastry.
Gotta go back.
I gotta go back. I want to say something that is from my own life. My father is disabled. He has a neuromuscular problem, which is basically like forever. Like it's hereditary. He got it from his mom. So basically, like his muscles keep shrinking for like the rest of his life, basically. And I want to thank you all for the work that you do, because I know that at a certain point he's not going to be able to use a mouse. And I want to thank everyone that works in the accessibility space. And I just want to say that the Paralympics are happening right now, and I feel like it's weirdly fitting that these talks are happening. And so this happened to my dad, but he's actually in the Paralympics representing Portugal today. So what I want to say is that just because something like that happened to you, you are still someone very important in this world, and he's now representing Portugal. The good thing about it is that my dad is representing Portugal in the Paralympics. The bad thing is that no matter what I do in life, even if I actually went to the Olympics, I will never do anything as impressive as he has done. Ever in my life, because like he's been to the Paralympics. Okay, yeah. This is all that I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that there is like some real people that are like impacted with the decisions that we as developers make. And it is a big community. And yeah, that's all I got to say. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll say goodbye for now. And I hope all of you have an amazing day. And I hope to see you all soon, maybe one day in Finland or in Croatia. I don't know. I miss Croatia.
Finger crossed.
Yes. God, I miss Croatia.
Finger crossed.
So
Yeah, you have to come to Croatia. Yes.
I love Croatia.
You come
Everyone
here,
have-
and I will take you. Yeah, I will take you as a. You have your tourist guide here. So come,
yes,
come to
yes,
Croatia, and I will
yes.
show you around.
Show me the Dubrovnik. I've
And-
never been to the Dubrovnik.
Sure,
Thank you so
sure.
much. And everyone have a great day. It was great to be here. And yeah, just bye. Bye.
Bye.
Dubrovnik. I've never been to the Dubrovnik.
Sure,
Thank you so
sure.
much. And everyone have a great day. It was great to be here.